Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Bird, and this is my colleague, Jason Crow. We're from the Afterlives of Cities, which is a non-traditional architecture practice. We're associated with Monash University in the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture. And we're sort of a group of many people. So the four at the top of this slide are essentially the architects. We're registered architects, both here in Australia and the US. And we work, I guess, at this capacity of asking what if questions. So very much interested in experimental uses of architecture and the way that they can transform spaces and places, and in this case, a regional context. We're made up of astronomers, astrophysicists, cinematographers, industrial designers, interior architects, and architects. After Warracknabeal is a project located in Warracknabeal, which is northwest Victoria, about 4 hours drive away. An organisation called Working Heritage managed this property, a courthouse, that is the number of projects they look after across Victoria. They approached us about 3 years ago to essentially look at a way of transforming a dormant courthouse into a creative use.
Yeah, so the courthouse was built in 1872, so it's 150 years old at this point, and had been sitting vacant for 4 decades when Working Heritage approached us. And they approached us with a question about how to adapt and reuse heritage sites in Victoria, and in particular, how to adapt the Warracknabeal Court House to better serve the needs of the region. Warracknabeal is is the largest of the small-sized towns in the area. It has about 2,500 people. It is on the Silo Art Trail, but there are no kind of painted or muraled silos in Warracknabeal itself. There's a strong desire to interconnect Warracknabeal with the rest of the region and to begin to allow it as this larger community within the area to act as a hub for the surrounding region. So Working Heritage kind of approaches like, we have this, this site that we manage. We're not 100% sure what to do with it. The building is relatively dilapidated. It has some structural issues, but we need some creative thinking relative to how it might be transformed into something productive for the area of Warracknabeal. Say anything about?
Yeah, sure. Just some imagery here of the region, which is, I guess typically overlooked, but an incredibly stunning space. So obviously, history in recent years of agricultural use. The further we sort of studied the area, just acknowledging the night sky and astronomy in particular, the salt lakes. And then I guess, yeah, as Jason says, more recently, the art silo trail has, started to transform this region.
Yeah, and as Matthew mentioned, we were very much, so one of the things that kind of stands out, obviously, is the nighttime sky. We were also interested in the scattering of man-made objects throughout the region, the silos, the farm machinery, and the resilience with which members of the Warracknabeal community and the surrounding region adapt and reuse the materials that are at hand to create and craft other sorts of things. So here's some imagery of the courthouse as it was, and some of the other interesting references for us of the silos, the town hall, which is a beautiful building in Warracknabeal, those silos with their caps, which will feature later on. This is the images of the courthouse above are after we had cleaned it out a bit, but you can see the existing furniture and that sort of thing. It had suffered quite severely underfloor and in the walls relative to its ability to function. It also wasn't accessible and it wasn't open to the community, so it was quite closed down. Everybody knew where it was and knew what it was in the community, and everybody in the community had been there before in different kind of modes, but nobody really knew what was going on. And in fact, it was largely used for storage at the time that prior to us kind of cleaning it out.
So this is, it's one of 4 identical courthouses across northwest Victoria. Would I think be classified as late Victorian, built in 1872. And it is heritage in terms of the exterior, but fortunately working with our clients, Heritage Victoria, Working Heritage, there was I guess clear guidance in terms of what we could and couldn't do with the building. But the 2 key main kind of moves that we've created is this new rampway into the front, opening up they're close to form with a new glass entrance. And I guess, there's a new abolitions block, which is DDA accessible up the back.
And the program kind of as it developed, it originally had been an open working space predominantly for artists, and that kind of changed as we consulted with the Area Warracknabeal Council, the Warracknabeal Action Group, and various other community groups in Warracknabeal and in the region to kind of develop a response that would be accessible to the community, but also serve the community and open up to open up to regional arts tourism in particular. We should note that the budget for this project was exceptionally limited, and that's kind of part of its experimental nature for us and for Working Heritage. The footprint of the courthouse is roughly 200 square meters. We had $200,000 to do something with that project. So again, a lot of the work was undertaken by ourselves to adapt and remake the structure,
which is kind of our thing to do. So I think testing ideas through this design make kind of mindset. So working with concepts, but actually working collectively to create. Sure. So we're running out of time. But yeah, just I guess that you can see in these images, if we go to the next slide, one of the big moves was, bringing in this laser cut pattern, which basically represents the southern night sky in 20,000 years in the future and 20,000 years in the past. So backlit.
Yeah, and so relative to our namesake, kind of anticipating both what the afterlife of the building as it was when we found it and what the afterlife of the building might be in the future. If we go back really quickly, also notice kind of the reference to the silo construction in the terms of the way that we opened up the space, or images of those kind of two main interventions, the accessibility ramp and the ablution shed as it's reskinned. And the kind of this making approach kind of continued into the furnishings, a lot of which we made or adapted from existing materials on site.
Yeah, and sort of this combination of robotic fabrication and then handcraft. So working with our group, with the artists and other artists to develop, I guess, the start of this kind of art ecology within the interiors.
So there's kind of everything from the handmade to laser cutting to single point incremental forming with industrial robots that enters into the artwork, the kind of fabrication of the beds, the manufacture of the light fixtures in the space.
And just, more recently, we've started to host our artists. So there's an artist residency program associated with the works tour. This year is our pilot phase. So James Tyler, Indigenous artist from the Mildura area, spent a month in the courthouse with his family and really used it as a base to explore the wider region. So Little Desert National Park, the Grampians area, and then further north into the Mallee.
Yeah, and so the building opened in December, and James's residency began the new year. It was the first of what will be several that we are working with Working Heritage to organize and bringing in artists to do additional residencies. From each one, we consider what you're seeing in the lower images are James actually meeting with kind of several members of the Warracknabeal Action Group. We're getting feedback from them on ways to continue thinking about what the future life of the courthouse might be for the community and how it continues to adapt to regional needs.
Excitingly, there's a number of further projects in Warracknabeal in the region that have come about from this project. So I think, we're very much, even though we're Melbourne based, we're very much excited to be, establishing ourselves up in the Wimmera Mallee.